Hey everybody, it's Tyler Esselman.
And Michael Osinski.
And you are listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's a podcast where we invite someone to come into our virtual living room to defend an album that they believe is perfect.
So perfect, in fact, Michael, that 10 out of 10 simply is not good enough.
I tried something new, and midway through
I like
regretted
that.
it.
Yeah,
well, I mean,
cool.
I'm practicing. I'm workshopping it.
Throw shit at wall, see what's stick. That's where.
Why do people say that? That's gross.
Who would throw spaghetti at the wall?
There we go. Thank you.
I think actually Italians don't actually do that. I don't know. We'll have to ask the Italians.
I don't know.
Well, we have somebody who might be able to help us out with this. She's a lover of all things that are delicious and wonderful, and she is wonderful. Michael, who are we talking to today?
We are talking to Isabella Morano. Isabella Morano is a real-ass Aquarius. She's creative, discerning, and loves celebrating any and all occasions. Her creativity shines in her latest work, producing and acting in the short film Tea for Two, and in her fourth harvest as winemaker/founder under her personal wine label, Isa Wines. Am I getting that right? Awesome. Mm-hmm. There are a few important threads that hold these creative projects together, namely her big group of friends and family, her excitement for cute dogs, can't blame you there, and her love for music. You know it's going to be a good day when she's listening to Radiohead, and you know it's a bad day when she's listening to Jack's Mannequin. And she is here with us in the Zoom room. Isabella, hello.
Hi. It was so hard not to talk that whole time. I really
we like
biting
this.
My tongue.
Yeah, it's a new thing. It's a new thing where you're here when we're saying it. It's kind of strange.
It's so fun, and I'm looking directly at you, like looking you in the eyes while you're talking.
Crazy eye contact.
That was very fun. I loved that intro.
Isabella, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're very lucky to have met in college because of our mutual friend and friend of the pod, Noah Lawfer.
Hi, Noah.
God love him. Saw him the other day, actually.
Oh.
Funny story, real quick, apropos of Noah, is that we ran into a Nicolet High School alum randomly at a bar here in Los Angeles a few months ago, and him and Noah just hit it off like you would not.
Do you remember what his name was?
I'll tell you off recording,
okay, cool.
so as not to expose him.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But man, the Wisconsin was strong in that room.
It's strong all over California. It's kind of crazy. The migration it happens.
Because you've been up in the Bay Area for many years now.
For 13 years, yeah.
But it sounds like you might be coming down to LA sometime in the coming years.
Let's hope so. LA or New York. I'm constantly between moving to LA or New York. And recently I'm way more into LA, but sometimes I'm way more into New York. But we'll see.
Depends on whether or not you want seasons.
Which I don't, but then there's so much more to New York. Like New York just has so much life, and I love the life. And LA does too, but it's a different kind of life.
Totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we have serious business to get to today.
Mm-hmm.
You have a case to make and a really excellent album to put before us today. So tell us, Isabella, what album hath thou brought before the This One Goes to 11 tribunal today?
So I believe strongly with all of my heart that the album Gray by Moses Sumney is the greatest album ever made.
Holy shit.
Big words.
Yes.
Big words.
Wow,
I've thought about this long and hard. This is not flippant. This is a real belief.
Yes. Okay.
All
I can feel it. It's coursing through the Zoom screen. So, okay. Moses Sumney is somebody who I first heard on a track with Sufjan Stevens many years ago. Make Out in My Car. Make Out in Your Car? Make Out in Your Car, I think it's called.
Make Out in My Car. I just want to
make
out in my car.
Yeah. So,
we did the same, but we switched.
So good. Really,
that's a really good song.
And Sufjan and Moses together is a combination I really like.
And we just talked about Sufjan, like the episode right before yours. Yeah.
That continuity, that is some beautiful, you thought about that. You made that choice and it worked.
It fit. But I think it's fair to say that Moses is still kind of like on his ascendancy. Like he's definitely still on the come up, even though he's sort of been around forever in other ways. But that leads me to believe that there may be a significant portion of our listenership who doesn't know who Moses Sumney is. Luckily for them, we have the perfect feature to get them up to date. Michael, what's that feature called?
That feature is called The Beginner's Guide to Moses Sumney's Gray in 60 Seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler is going to be covering that this week. So that means, Isabella, you get a chance to evaluate how well he does in introducing Moses Sumney to our listenership, using whatever scale you want, gold stars, A, B, C, D, whatever.
Whatever comes to me, we'll see.
Exactly. Yeah. Feel it in the moment. All right, Tyler, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, 60 seconds on the clock, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
The middle son of Ghanaian immigrants, the first part of Moses Sumney's childhood was spent in San Bernardino, California, where his parents worked a variety of hustles to support their work as pastors for their community. When Moses was 10, his family moved back to Ghana, settling in Accra, which proved to be a challenging and formative period for the young artist. Bullied for his American otherness, Sumney turned inward, and his love of music and writing blossomed. A return to SoCal at 16 gave him the opportunity he needed to embrace his nascent creative drive and identity. He studied creative writing and poetry at UCLA and had his own radio show. After inviting R&B outfit King onto his show, they asked him to open for them, which would snowball into Sumney becoming a darling of the LA indie music scene. Managers, agents, and labels tripping over themselves to make him the next big thing. But that path didn't sit right with Sumney. In an effort to push back against the industry's imperative to categorize him and his work within an inch of his life, he moved to Asheville, North Carolina, where he recorded his first one, Aromanticism, and his opus, Gray, a dizzying, heady array of textures and perspectives. Gray has put Sumney on the map as an essential, iconoclastic voice in art right now.
All right.
I had a little bit extra, but that's okay. That's okay.
It's okay.
Oh,
it's okay.
great.
It's like the little bits of cereal that fall out of the bowl that then you make sure you eat up. Yeah.
Right.
All right, Isabella, how do you do? How would you
That
evaluate
was an 11 out of 10. I got to say, that was just perfect. It captured, you took us on a roller coaster ride and we got there in the end. That was great.
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to say about him. And weirdly, you kind of have to go digging for it, which I found fun. It's not all there on his Wikipedia page. And it's not, you sort of have to piece together little threads and you find these little nuggets. So there's lots to talk about. But
I like the mystery too. The mystery of Moses Sumney has captivated me because there's some things I want to know and some things I don't. And I'm glad that he's not in my face all the time. Even I mean, you have to actively search out information, which is great for his creative ventures.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh. Okay. And there's a fundamental question there that I have for later. But before we do that, let's talk about you. We invite people on this podcast because we feel like they'll bring us good music because we trust they have good taste, but we also feel like they have an interesting story to tell themselves. So would you tell us what your relationship with music has been, beginning, middle, all throughout?
I mean, beginning, I have to mention the Spice Girls. The Spice Girls were my first musical influence. But my first concert with my mom and my sister when I was 4. We wore these velvet dresses and we're super high up in the nosebleeds, but I thought they could see me and I was so excited to be near the Spice Girls. But I actually really love pop. That's a good thing to mention too. I'm a big pop person. And for a lot of my life, I kind of fought that. And now I'm going back into the pop part of my life. I wanted to be cool and I didn't want anyone to know that I liked pop music, but I love pop music. I love, alternative. I don't really like the genre name of alternative because it's so many different things. And I actually feel that way about this album. I was thinking what would you categorize Moses Sumney's Gray as? An alternative is the only real category that I can think of, but I just like music that makes me feel something, and pop music often makes me feel happy. And so I love that kind of music. I've always loved music that makes me feel sad. I'm a really big sad music person, but the older I get, the more I seek out music that makes me feel like myself, like this album does. I guess that's kind of, I've gone on a twisty road in answering your question, but
yeah, it's good. I
like all kinds of music and I always have. And I love talking about music, and so I'm so excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. What was so Spice Girls was early, and this is at least the second invocation of the Spice Girls this season, which I hope we get more. I think Spice World is a radically underappreciated movie.
It is incredible. I need to rewatch. I keep thinking I need to rewatch. Yes, it's high camp, but it also appeals to so many different kinds of people. It's incredible. Yeah.
Who's your Spice Girl?
Baby Spice. Well, Baby Spice was my Spice growing up. My Spice. Girl. Baby was the Spice. Now that I'm older, I feel like Scary and Jerry or Ginger Spice both speak to me. Those are more me. But Baby Spice was it. I was always dressing in pink. I was obsessed with her. I had blonde hair too, and we would always do my hair like her. It was fun.
Who was yours, Michael?
Well, I didn't have one, but I did get to, as I've referenced before, I did get to see Ginger Spice perform when she was solo.
Wow.
At a gay club in London when I was studying over there. So I was like very close. We didn't realize she was going to be there. Mm-hmm. Also, her solo career was huge over there, obviously. So it was. I mean, she put on a good show at a gay club. I mean, come on, it's like, you know,
it's perfect,
matchy.
Yeah.
And I'm a sporty guy. Like, I think she always. I always thought she was the best singer. Like, I always I like the, you know, the accent, you know, the whole bit, and like the bit of contrast she added to the whole thing.
She did well on Dancing with the Stars too.
Did she? Okay.
Yeah, good. She did.
I didn't see it, but I believe it.
What other artists were being played around the house when you were young? What other artists do you remember hearing either your parents play or family members play?
My dad is really into, or he was really into John Bon Jovi. So we listened to a lot of that. Bruce Springsteen. He's from upstate New York. So he's a very, like, that's kind of him. My mom loved the Beatles. We were constantly listening to the Beatles. So that's like a big part of my developmental brain. But we didn't, a lot of that kind of like older, I guess John Bon Jovi wasn't older back then, but my dad also loves Pink. He still listens to Pink, and we listen.
My dad does too. Yeah.
It's such a funny dad thing. It's like, what's going on? But yeah, those were kind of we listened to the radio a lot, but those were the like albums or the CDs. We would listen to those ones.
And you did invoke Radiohead in your bio. So
yes. So full disclosure, my partner wrote my bio because I'm really bad at writing my bios. And yeah, thanks, Claire. I told her, I was like, I need you to do this one thing just really quick, just do it for me. And she just killed it. I loved what she wrote. But
it's so good. Yeah.
It was really funny.
Yeah.
Radiohead, I actually didn't discover Radiohead until like my mid-20s, and Radiohead has a similar effect on me as Moses Sumney. Not exactly different, but similar feeling where it's like, oh, like this music is me. Like, I understand it. It understands, like, when I hear these songs, I feel understood. Especially the album in Rainbows. You've already done that on the pod, but
our first album we covered.
Yeah. And that was it. It's perfect. It's one of the most perfect albums in the world. And it's just, I love Radiohead so much. I listened to them nonstop for like years, and I can't listen to them so much now because they remind me of a relationship I was in, but I still do listen.
Damn it. Damn those relationships that just take an album from
I know.
you.
But then there's always a moment, or there comes a time when you're like, oh wait, I know I'm past that because I can be listening to it. Or like these songs, like they remind me of the fond memories instead of the sad ones. I think I'm there now. I just need to revisit.
Well, let's pivot now, and we want to know more about how you discovered this album or this artist. Like, if you remember the exact moment or the circumstances, or like how did this music come into your life?
I actually really do remember the first moment, which is really funny.
We love that.
Yes. I have like either an amazing memory, I remember every detail, or I remember nothing. And this is one of the things that I remember every detail. So it was the year, I think it was 2018. And I was working at a restaurant in San Francisco called Absinthe. I was a sommelier there. And so we had this wine room. Basically, our office was a wine room. And so there's like a computer on a bunch of wine crates. So I would be like typing here, doing my work. And then behind me is just like bottles and bottles of wine. And my work involved all the wine. So it was just like a nice little place to be. And it was during dinner service one night. It was like a particularly slow night at the restaurant. And so I was getting some work done, and I often played music from a little JBL speaker while I worked. And I remember the moment I was typing, or I was doing something stupid, like some work thing. And then all of a sudden the song Plastic from Aromanticism came on by Moses Sumney. And I literally stopped. I like didn't know what to do. I heard his voice. I heard like I don't know if you've heard that song, but it has this like really booming kind of commanding presence, and I could not move. I just had to stand there and listen. And I was like, what is this? And I go over to my phone and I look down and I see the album cover, and I just like start scrolling through and finding the Aromanticism album, and I listened to the whole thing, and I was just like paralyzed with emotion. It was amazing.
What kind of emotion was it? Was it like like what you don't have to go specific, but like how would you characterize it?
I'll get as specific as I can. It was like it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. And it was also so like haunting and sad, but also hopeful. It was like the way that Moses Sumney's voice it's so singular. It's so just like, I've never heard anyone sing like him. And the way that he, like his music, I don't even know. Sometimes I'm not a very like instrumenty person. Like I hear the instruments and I appreciate them, but I'm not like, oh, and then the bass or whatever. I'm just like, that sound feels good in my ears. And so I don't know what it is that they're playing in that song, but it's just like, it made me feel like I was like laying under I was laying under the stars, and I could see all the stars, and I could like see the universe. It was just like this amazing kind of connective feeling. But I was really in a wine room in San Francisco.
Immediately transportative. That's good. That's really good.
So in a sense, like there wasn't someone who introduced this to you. This was like a discovery. I mean, aside from maybe an algorithm, but like this is you discovering it yourself then.
So later on, that was my story for a long time. And then later on, my ex corrected me and he was like, no, I sent you that song. And I was like, oh. Dang. So in my mind, it just magically found me. But apparently there was some intervention there.
Well, you know, there is no objective truth, so.
Yeah, we'll go with the romantic version. The song just appeared on my phone and I have no idea why.
Well, it found you when it needed to. Like that's, I think, because that's happened to me before, where people share something with me and then it maybe just doesn't make sense to me orally at the time, but then, you know, you have to come at it from a different angle. I think that's a totally legitimate phenomenon. Yeah. What do you feel like your understanding of Moses is like as an artist now? Are you kind of like a super fan of his, or is it more like osmosis that kind of what he is, what he does finds you sort of like the song initially found you?
That's a really interesting question. I think the idea of like, I am a super fan of a few things in my life, but I also feel like it's kind of, I have a weird relationship to like being, I feel like being a super fan is a lot, you know, it's like, you don't know that person's never going to know you. And I respect super fans and I respect that kind of love, but it's more like I'm much more into like, I appreciate him and what he does so much and I want him to thrive, but like, and I'm sure if I ever saw him in person, I would like absolutely crumble. I mean, I hope not. I think I'd be very cool, but I think it's kind of, I guess it's more, I like the osmosis thing. It's more like osmosis. It's like this album makes me feel like myself, like I mentioned, like it makes me feel like someone went into my brain and like pulled out all these songs and now they're out here in the world. So it's sort of like, I have a deep respect and appreciation for him. And I find him fascinating. Like, I think, I don't know how someone could be like him. He's like so otherworldly. Yeah. So I guess I am a super fan in a way.
Sure. But it doesn't sound like you're, we talk about stan culture a little bit on this pod, right? And it doesn't sound like you're like a stan of his in the sense that you're like keeping tabs on his whereabouts, or like have read everything, you know, like all of his published work or anything like that, which you know, there's a trend of that in the music sphere right now, just kind of in media in general. And I think it's the first time now that we're trying to figure out the limits of that and like what's appropriate and what feels like it's dehumanizing in some ways. So I respect that level of moderation.
I will say though, last week I was in New York with some of my friends who had just spent some time in Asheville, and the first question out of my mouth was, "Did you see Moses Sumney?" And they said yes, and they said that they have a connection to him. And we had been drinking, and tears came to my eyes, and they were like, "Are you crying?" And I was like, "No." They were like, "What?" My friend was like, "You're fully crying," and I was like, "No, I'm not. I just."
That's amazing.
It was so embarrassing. And we laughed. We're still laughing about it. I've texted her about it a few times. And I'm like, remember that time? Like, you know, that meme where it's like the girl and her mom's sitting on the couch and she's like scared and the girl's standing like crying. Like that was me in that moment. I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I just feel really happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy he's doing well.
Those degrees of separation are pretty minimal. That's good.
And I'm not going to get my hopes up, and I don't want Moses Sumney to ever think that I am a weirdo freak, but I really respect him, and I hope that he's well.
Hell yeah. We wish we hope you're okay.
Otherworldly feels like a good word to use to describe him too. I'm wondering, have you encountered his music in the wild? Because I know that a lot of his songs have made their way. Like, I didn't realize that I had actually heard his song in a Westworld episode before.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess I'm wondering, like, what do you make of that? Does it feel like is his music like is he an artist that people don't know they know, that has sort of like existed in the background?
I think in a way, yes. I've only encountered his music. I know he was on the show The Idol. I haven't seen it, but I know he acted in that, and I think he had a song in that. But there was one movie in particular that I remember. I can't remember. I want to say it was the song either Me in 20 Years, or it was one of the, I don't know, it was one of his like really beautiful songs that I loved. It was the movie Swan Song. Have you seen that movie?
No.
It's really good. It's a haunting movie. The concept is really interesting, but it was during a particularly emotional point of the movie and they played that song and I was just like, come on, like that's in a good way. Like I felt very connected to the moment, and it was just like a beautifully artistic kind of choice. And I think I cried. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know. I feel like I don't hear I hear his music on Instagram sometimes because I follow him, but it's hard to know these days whether it's like, am I hearing it on my like personal device kind of, or like the algorithm, are they showing me the things I like, or am I actually hearing it out in the wild? I'm not sure.
Yeah, man, that's real right there. Let's talk a little bit about how undefinable he is by design, right? We otherworldly's been used, and I've read some interesting things about kind of his resistance towards being pigeonholed into R&B because of the kind of like racial, like the racial element of that, saying like the assumptions of what that means if you're an R&B artist, and like kind of the expectations that are put onto him and any other artist of color that might be put in that box. Like how, if you were trying to express to somebody else like what this album is like, if you're trying to express the experience as like a elevator pitch, what do you think you'd say?
I don't know if I've ever been able to do an elevator pitch in my life because I just will go on and on. But
Sure.
I haven't thought about this in preparation for this podcast. This album is like it's like there's so much emotion. It's like there's so much. It's such a sexy album. It's such a like thought-provoking album. It's a spiritual album. It's like a there are so many different themes that he plays with, like intimacy and like knowledge of the self and self-exploration. It's like an all-encompassing album. It's like an album that's about everything. And it kind of like, in a way, it lacks focus in a way that I really like, because I also lack focus. I feel like especially it's a two-part album. Like in the first part, it's like very intense and like there's this kind of like, I don't know how to explain it, this energy to it. And then in the second part of the album, it kind of it takes you down, and it's more about like heartbreak and sort of like acceptance and things like that.
Yeah.
I feel like if we were in an elevator, we'd be there by now. So I should probably.
Well, it's an interesting way of serving it up, right? Because there is, I think it's a well-made point about the two sides, if you will, contrasting in that way. I think there's a lot of muscle in the front in like the first part. The horns, I think, really work to do that. I think there's something indie about him, and I use the word indie in sort of like the early aughts way, right? Like the way that the term indie has kind of lost meaning a little bit, I think, in our current musical landscape, but it really feels to me almost like he made the only kind of indie rock album that Moses Sumney could make.
Exactly. Yes.
Which I don't really know entirely what that means, but it's sort of like the mixture of sounds. There's like I feel like a lot of Grizzly Bear and a lot of almost kind of like math rocky sort of like guitar action happening on there. So it gives me that kind of spirit. And but even that might be too much of a pigeonhole.
I mean, I do want to say one thing, because I want to flag one thing. It's interesting that you use the word muscle, that it's like muscly, because one of the themes in this album is like masculinity. Like he kind of tackles that issue like in a really kind of subtle way. But I remember when the album first came out, I read something about how he really focused on like changing his body. Like he wanted to be so fit, like as an experiment almost, like in a way that's like what would it feel like to be this way, or like it was like a show of masculinity, or what would it feel like to be so masculine. And I thought that was really fascinating. But I think your assessment of the album in general is pretty correct. It's just like there's no way of knowing. It just kind of is, and it is truly something only Moses Sumney could create, which is so special.
It's freaking cool.
And now I want to know what he discovered. Like, I want to, like, when he became fit like that, was he like, oh, I kind of like this? Or was he like, ooh, this is too much? Like,
I mean, he stayed that fit in my observation. He's still very like muscly. So I have a feeling he likes it. I don't know.
I saw an interview with him where he was talking about his titties bouncing a little too much, and I was like, okay. I was like, it would be, as someone who has never had pecs like that, I'm like, God, it's like it has to be an experience for a male identifying person to like have their titties bouncing out of control.
Totally. He talks about titties a lot, which is something I really like about him.
Bless. All right, we've talked around the music itself for long enough. I think it's time that we let our listeners get another little taste of the album itself. Isabella, can you tell us what you have chosen as your standout track?
I am doing a real wild card by my own standards. I've chosen the track also, and. which is not musical. It is a speaking track.
Oh, great. Okay. Let's say no more then. Let's let them have a little taste, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side.